Also, I've been instructed not to speak to y'all, but I got a few more fingers for you.
Well, do you know what happened to her?
No. You know who does?
Tell me.
How would I know? What happened to Natalie? What do you guys know? All I know is from Facebook Messenger, and I hate Facebook.
What did Facebook Messenger say?
It doesn't matter. You need to get a hold of the police and talk to them.
The room is small, the kind designed to make people sweat. Joseph Michael Lopez sits across from two detectives, his Domino's Pizza uniform still creased from a shift that he never finished. A digital recorder clicks on. "We've got your phone records," one detective says. "We know you were there." But when the detective slides a single sheet of paper across the table, a map dotted with GPS pings, Lopez's eyes flicker. Every dot leads to the same desolate stretch of Riverdale Road, and at the very end of that trail lies a horrifying secret.
This monster took my baby. There is no justice in this.
By the way, this is Dark Case, and you can call me Jack. I bring you rare and unseen true crime cases, as well as other things that you may later regret knowing, with multiple uploads every single week. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, then make sure you join the Dark Case family now by hitting subscribe and turning all notifications on. And now for today's silly little question. If your phone could only have 3 apps for the rest of your life, which ones would you keep? All of your support over on Patreon, as well as right here via channel memberships on YouTube, is so appreciated, and I really can't thank you all enough. However, thank you. But now, on with the video.
What I'm thinking this is all about is someone I was talking to over on Craigslist. I was just on there, looking for pen pals.
Detectives didn't really need Lopez to tell them where Natalie Bollinger met her end. The coordinates led them to the 11600 block of Riverdale Road, Adams County, a lonely strip that threads past McIntosh Dairy, the kind of place where headlights vanish into the darkness.
Yeah, Jim, on Thursday, she was reported missing. On Friday, the very next day, someone passing through this area found her body. Today, at a news conference, the sheriff asked for anyone with information about that time period to come forward. The last 26 hours of 19-year-old Natalie Bollinger's life are a mystery.
We don't have anybody who was either talking with her through social media or through text or in person or on the telephone.
Family reported the teen missing on Thursday, December 28th. The following day, a body was discovered off a rural road in Adams County.
We really didn't have a whole lot of information. We were still actually even trying to come up with a name, a way of trying to identify who she was.
A Facebook post Bollinger made just 1 week before her disappearance fueled a firestorm of speculation on social media. The post was a public warning about a man she said had been stalking her for years. She filed a restraining order against that man, Shawn Shwartz.
We have talked to him, and again, not ready to call anybody a suspect.
Shwartz made his own posts about the accusations, even calling Natalie a friend.
Please help find her, please. Please help.
The Adams County Sheriff says the posts are part of their investigation, but warned of the trouble social media can cause.
Our goal is to make sure that we're not heading down a path, down a rabbit trail that we don't need to go down.
The day after Natalie went missing, a passerby had spotted her there, face down in the snow-dusted grass, 9mm casings just feet away. The coroner would later confirm what detectives had suspected, one single blast from a firearm to the head. But there was something else, an extraordinarily high dose of heroin in her blood. And if I have to redact that word, I'm talking about the substance that comes from poppies. There was enough of the substance in her system to end her time on this earth without the bullet. So when Lopez sat in that chair, detectives didn't start with the why. They started with, how many stories are you planning to tell us today? Natalie Bollinger was born in Westminster, Colorado, and grew up alongside her twin sister Alicia in a close and loving family. She lived in Colorado, also Virginia and Rhode Island, and was known for her caring nature, her love for animals, and her artistic talents from a young age. Emerging from a challenging adolescence, she persevered. excelling academically and enrolling in college, with aspirations to become a registered nurse.
And Dylan, detectives there say that social media played a big role in this investigation.
Yeah, we're told Natalie Bollinger was quite the typical teenager. She spent a lot of time on her cell phone and she spent a lot of time on social media. Ultimately, it would be those interactions online that would lead the sheriff's department to their suspect. Soon after Natalie Bollinger was found dead in late December, law enforcement used her cell phone to trace the final moments of her life.
As you can imagine, a 19-year-old social media or phone, there's a lot of data there.
Sheriff Mike McIntosh said Bollinger was active on social media.
It was there that we found a lot of the people that we interviewed. There were a lot of names that were thrown at us, and we went down every one of those.
But one specifically caught their attention.
In 2015, Natalie was just 17 and known for her generosity. She'd helped out a man named Shawn Shwartz. He was homeless in his mid-30s, with straggly tangled hair and a quick temper. At first it was kindness, but then it became something else. Shwartz followed her to Virginia when she moved. He even slept behind her workplace for weeks on end. When Natalie tried to cut contact, the calls, the emails, and the social media messages exploded. There was threats against her family. There was constant demands for attention. And over the span of 2 years, Natalie blocked him on all platforms again and again, but he just would not leave her alone.
What drew me to what she had posted was it was very weird.
Do you recall kind of what that said that got your attention?
Well, the title itself just said, I'm thinking about putting a hit on myself. So my first thought was, okay, someone obviously needs help and hasn't been getting the help that they need. Being the type of person that I am, I will do anything to help someone at least stay alive. My first thought was, I really want to help this girl. So after a little bit, I was like, I'm not getting anywhere. Let's see if I can convince her to meet up with me and see what happens.
In the interrogation room, Lopez didn't seem nervous. He began talking about an unusual Craigslist ad titled, he claimed, I want to put a hit on myself. He told detectives that he'd replied out of curiosity, just pretending to be a hitman. They exchanged over 100 messages, and after his shift at Domino's, he picked Natalie up in Broomfield. He said that they then drove around scouting for places where she might like to meet her end.
Drove around for a little bit, like 2-3 hours, I can't remember exactly, and we just talked. Eventually, I think she either got fed up with me, because I guess she was pretty serious about what was going on, and, she said, just drop me off here. That's last time I saw her, really. It sucks that it turned out the way it did.
Natalie allegedly told him that she was having problems with her boyfriend and that it had all become too much. And according to him, they couldn't settle on a location, so he simply took her home. And that was the end of it, or so he claimed. But the problem with this claim is that the GPS trail didn't end at her apartment. It ended exactly where her body was found, and detectives had the printout sitting right there on the table. Natalie used Facebook like a diary. On December the 13th, 2017, she posted a public warning. It read, Hey y'all, I have a public announcement. There is a man named Shawn Shwartz. I met him when I was young, and about 2 years ago we crossed paths again. I helped him out with rides and things. Then I moved to Virginia. He drove across the country to see me. He slept behind my work for weeks. When I told him I didn't want to see him anymore, he sent me hundreds of texts and calls. He parked his car in front of my house, blocking the road for hours. Laying on his horn, he was arrested. Since then, I've asked him to leave me alone, and he won't. He's made countless accounts to get around being blocked, threatens my family, says he'll take his life in front of me, and harass my friends and family. If you get a message from him, please ignore it. Responding only encourages him. Friends rallied in the comments. They told Natalie to stay safe, to simply call the police, to document everything that was happening to her. But there was a hitch that she didn't know about. Shwartz was already inside the thread. He was using a fake profile, repeatedly defending himself. He was urging everyone to re-examine their intentions. Natalie pressed ahead anyway, and just 2 days later she filed for a restraining order. That order was granted on December the 22nd, and just 6 days after that, she vanished. This Facebook post would become a lighthouse for investigators. It set the internet on fire. It also set a trap. Everyone was looking at Shwartz. With all eyes on Shawn Shwartz, perhaps someone else was left unseen. Back in the interview room, detectives let Lopez talk. He pivoted, a new version of events. He said he'd taken a wrong turn after location scouting, and he ended up at a dairy farm off Riverdale Road. He says that Natalie got out the car, she kneeled down, she took a 9mm from her bag, and according to Lopez, she acted before he could stop her. He claimed that right there on that spot, her time on this earth came to an end. He says he panicked and he left, that he didn't call 911, and that he didn't wait for officers.
It's very, very difficult in these cases, even if there's a stated motive, to really determine long-term what that motive truly is.
Detectives listened to this new version, and then they slid over the autopsy findings. One blast to the head. There was stippling and peppering around the wound. This meant that the muzzle was not pressed to the skin. A forensic pathologist later testified that the shot must have come from roughly 14 to 15 inches away, most likely 6 to 12 inches. That distance matters. It argued against it being done by the victim in the way that Lopez described. It argued that it was done by someone else stood behind her. Detectives added the GPS points, his car pausing near the cul-de-sac, the time window matching the disappearance. They asked him to explain the physics of it all, the angle, the distance, the absence of a call for help. Lopez just stared down at his hands. The second story was now unraveling too. He took a breath and then offered a third. December the 28th, 2017, began like any other winter morning in Broomfield. Natalie was still living with her boyfriend, Joseph Marino. He left for work just after 6 a.m., leaving her at the apartment. When Marino returned that afternoon, two things were gone: Natalie and his 9mm Glock. Her phone was still at the house, and by that evening she was officially reported missing. Search efforts spread quickly. Social media posts, calls to friends, urgent messages sent to anyone who might have seen her. Given the recent restraining order against Shawn Shwartz, his name was the first on everybody's lips. But Shwartz was not in hiding. He was instead, of course, on Facebook, arguing in public threads, insisting that he'd done nothing wrong. In reality, Natalie had spent part of that day texting with another man, a man that she'd never actually met in person. That was Joseph Michael Lopez. Those 111 messages, exchanged over just a few hours, would guide investigators right to him, and also to the GPS data from his phone and car. In turn, those would guide them to the place where Natalie's life ended.
To try to figure out what happened to her, all right? And I think that you know. There's some things I think you're leaving out from, okay? Just ask right now that you just come forward, and you get everything off your chest.
Confronted with the forensics that didn't fit either of his first two accounts, Lopez's third story came into play. This time he said he tried to save her, tried to talk her out of it. He said they'd driven around for an extended period, circling possible locations. He said that she was insistent. Near the dairy farm, he said that she got out and kneeled in the cold grass. He said that he stood behind her, that they prayed together, and then, eyes closed and shaking, he made the blast ring out. Lopez claimed that he couldn't look, that he turned his head away, that he freaked out afterwards. In his trunk, detectives later found Natalie's purse and the Glock, the very same weapon that boyfriend Marino reported missing from his apartment. Lopez's explanation had shifted yet again in smaller ways, but the heart of it remained. He now admitted to pulling the trigger. Whether it was murder, her own decision, or something far darker, All of that was now for the court to decide. Originally, prosecutors charged Lopez with first-degree murder, a charge carrying a mandatory life sentence if convicted. But in February of 2019, the case shifted. Lopez agreed to plead guilty to second-degree murder. In exchange, the first-degree charge was dropped. The maximum penalty for that is 48 years.
After several emotional statements from Natalie's family, the judge gave Lopez the maximum sentence under his plea deal, 48 years in prison with 5 years parole. Now, before coming to that deal, the DA weighed every possible outcome and how the jury might have viewed the facts given. Despite the Bollingers' disapproval, Natalie's maternal side of the family says they're at peace with the sentence.
What we took because that was the most we could probably get without a jury agreeing 100%, because that's what would have taken for first-degree murder and life in prison.
Natalie's family wasn't told about the deal until it was already in motion. At sentencing, Natalie's father, Ted, stood in court and addressed the man who had admitted to doing all of this. "You took advantage of my daughter," he said. "She was vulnerable. You premeditated, brutally shot and killed my baby. I asked for an eye. You have been protected." The Bollinger family had no say in this. This is a deal with the devil.
It was a very emotional morning here. That courtroom was full of Natalie's friends and family. Now, Natalie's father, Ted Bollinger, was able to speak in court this morning while in custody for a parole violation. Bollinger told the judge he did not agree with the plea deal offered to Lopez because a deal was not justice. He also said that neither he nor his side of the family were told about the deal at the earliest date possible. The judge denied his request to continue the hearing because the prosecution says they made several attempts to contact the Bollinger family.
The Bollinger family had no say in this deal. This is no justice. I look at this deal as a deal with the devil. Natalie Marie Bollinger was a person. She had a life. Her life mattered more than you will ever know.
Anusha, this plea deal spared Joseph Lopez the possibility of a first-degree murder conviction and the possibility of spending the rest of his life in prison with no chance of parole. It was just after Christmas last year that Lopez saw that Craigslist ad that you mentioned, in which Bollinger effectively put a hit on herself. According to court documents, she'd previously expressed thoughts and had trouble with drugs. But today in court, it was not her dark days that were remembered by her family, it was her many happy ones.
Hey Grandma, it's Natalie. I just wanted to call and say Happy Merry Christmas Eve and I love you a bunch. And if you still want to come over tomorrow, okay. I love you. Have a great day.
That's who he took. That's who he took from us. She was young, beautiful, and had her future ahead of her.
Lopez is 23 years old. Under the terms of this deal and state law, he'll have to serve at least 36 years before he can apply for parole. But the fact that he could get out did not sit well with some members of her family, who really wanted a first-degree murder conviction, and in fact her father even called for him to receive the death penalty.
Lopez stood silently as family members spoke. He offered no apology. But what he did have to offer was the same version of events that he had finally settled on in the interrogation room. If the full prison term is served, Lopez will be 71 when he finally gets out. No Craigslist ad was ever found, and despite repeated searches and subpoenas to the site, no evidence surfaced that Natalie ever posted an ad asking for her own demise. That detail seemed to exist solely in Lopez's account. The brown in her system, I'm talking about the stuff from the poppy, a dose that most people wouldn't survive, was never fully explained. Toxicology confirmed its presence, but the investigation never determined who supplied it, when she took it, or why. There is also the question of the firearm. If Lopez's account is accurate, then Natalie brought it along. If not, he either took it himself or obtained it in some other way. And then of course there is Shawn Shwartz. He maintains his innocence, insisting his relationship with Natalie was misunderstood, that he was actually a friend and not a threat. Police no longer consider him a suspect in any way. For the public, the case closed with Lopez's conviction. For Natalie's family, the unanswered questions remain an open wound. In September of 2019, less than 2 years after Natalie's end, her twin sister Alicia Bollinger was also reported missing in Abilene, Texas. Local authorities issued alerts, and friends and relatives pleaded for information on social media. Thankfully, this time Alicia was located safe soon after, though details of the circumstances were never fully publicly explained. For the Bollinger family, though, it was a harrowing reminder of just how fragile life can feel once it's been pieced together after being shattered into millions of pieces. Two sisters bound by birth had now been the focus of urgent searches in the span of just 21 months. Natalie Bollinger would be in her 20s now, studying nursing, working towards a life that she once planned. Instead, her story is anchored to a snowy patch of ground off Riverdale Road, and to a man she barely knew. Whether Joseph Lopez was a predator that prosecutors described, or he was in fact the twisted helper that he claimed to be, we will probably never fully know. Be careful out there, and I'll see you soon.